Have you ever fallen in love with a fictional character? And that can mean a lot of different things for you. Perhaps you wouldn't call it romantic, but you feel a certain amount of admiration and respect for them. Maybe it's as simple as you find them attractive. Maybe you think they're charming and wish that you could meet someone in real life as driven or as funny as them. This character may be in a book, you might have met them in a game, maybe you were smitten at the sight of the lines and the shades that paint the contours of their face. Perhaps their voice made you feel safe. Have you ever felt a profound embarrassment when you consider these thoughts? You shouldn't feel this way. It's fiction, you tell yourself. It's just good writing, good acting, good character design. But have you ever found yourself thinking about that character hours and days later? Like when you aren't even consuming the story? Is that character Gemma? I'm going to ask you something now that might be a little more uncomfortable. If your answer to that first question was yes, you have fallen for a character, how far have you explored that? And I'm not telling you to post your answer in the comments, by the way, or to listen to this video without headphones on, but in your most private moments, to yourself, be honest. How far have you taken that? Have you held imaginary conversations with them? How many times have you viewed their ending? Have you written fan fiction about that character, drawn fan art? How much stuff have you bought to express that affection? Have you mentally written yourself into the story and become their new love interest? What do you say to them? What do they say back? Do you touch them? What kind of fan art have you drawn? What kind have you looked at? Do you really look forward to those spicy chapters? Have you read them multiple times behind a closed door? This is a Reddit post where one individual claims that being in love with a fictional character saved their life. After a family member has a near-death experience, things change at home. Finding an escape is overwhelmingly difficult, so they turn to their fictional crush. They spent all of their spare time consuming as much as they could about him. The writer goes on to say that if they had not found that character and fell so hard and deep in love with him, they would not have had the strength or will to go on. They write, "Even if others might criticize me for it, I am alive and I am healing." This is a movie called Her, where Theo falls in love with the AI that manages all of his devices. It's a premise that back in 2013 when this movie released felt like a silly, feverish look at the future, but now may not actually be so far-fetched. And you know what? I liked this movie. It was kind of a beautiful exploration of relationships and humanity, and we're going to talk about it more throughout this video. This is a man named Akihiko Kondo, who is not in a movie, who is not fictional, but is married to Hatsune Miku. This marriage comes after 10 years of them dating, a relationship that Mr. Kondo says pulled him out of a deep depression.
My friends, I want you to know that this very well may be the strangest video I have ever had the pleasure of writing. Because despite every self-deprecating joke and targeted gaffe I knee-jerkingly almost write in the script, I cannot deny that fictional characters have a very real effect on very real people. For as long as it has existed, stories have had the ability to move us and inspire us. If you're watching this, if you're writing this, you've almost certainly been emotionally affected by a story before. They compel people to act. There are stories in fiction for me that not only made me fall in love with characters, but also be so stirred by them that I genuinely wanted to be a better husband to my real-life wife because the relationship I saw portrayed was so pure. So as easy as it would be to make 100 jokes and mail it in by taking you on a tour through a handful of dating sims, I'd ask that you take my hand as we sail into the endless sea of psychological research and real-life pandemonium regarding artificial intimacy. There is so much to talk about, and much of it good. If you're watching this thinking, these people have lost their minds, having a crush on a fictional character is one thing, but anything beyond that is absurd, well, I'd simply ask that you be curious and not judgmental. Shout out to Coach Lasso. Because shockingly, and I mean that, I was shocked, much of what I found in this mountain of research is encouraging, wholesome even, but not all of it.
I invite you to explore how far out to sea you've been. I invite you to sail a little further with me today into a beautiful horizon. and I also invite you to experience the violent ends that these violent delights often lead to. The dark side of fictional romance. So get a blankie, get a pet, get a snack, and while you're doing that, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Rocket Money. Hey, how you doing? You ever sign up for a streaming service to watch like one specific show and then you finish it and then you go to bed and then somehow a month passes and you get charged for it again? No? It's just me, okay. Aren't you attractive and responsible? I, however, have the memory of an anxious beta fish and on multiple occasions have left subscriptions active because that free trial does not last forever. Rocket Money is here to help with that. This personal finance app allows you to manage subscriptions, lower bills, make a custom budget, and grow your savings all in one place. Rocket Money can identify all of your subscriptions in a single list. From there, you simply select the ones you want to break up with, and it may be able to help you cancel them with just a few taps. You guys know how fond I am of organized backlogs, and turns out if you budget your money in the same way, it has its advantages. Who knew? With Rocket Money, you can create a customized budget in seconds. It shows you where your money is going at all times and identifies top spending categories with insights on how you can stay within your budget better. Heck, the app will even notify you about upcoming charges or when your balance is low to help avoid overdrafts and late fees. This is the real deal, guys. Why not join over 5 million members using Rocket Money today? Go to rocketmoney.com/Daryl or click the link in the description to get started for free. Thanks again to Rocket Money for the sponsor. Now back to the show. In a 2008 study, researchers had participants recall a time they fought with a loved one. If you were in this study, the point, unbeknownst to you, would be to stir up your emotions and specifically increase your belongingness need. Then, if you were in the experimental group, you'd be prompted to reflect on your favorite television show, the characters, the events, how it makes you feel. And what they found was that the folks who recalled their favorite TV show, as opposed to those who just recalled a time when they watched whatever happened to be on TV, took a significantly lessened blow to mood and self-esteem. Thinking about those characters seemed to not only comfort the participants, but also to buffer against the social wound they had just recalled. And this is an important study to open with because it answers some questions that we can't help but ask when we talk about this. Are the feelings that character is giving you genuine? Are there people that actually glean something true from this? Are there real benefits to romance with a screen or a page? And this study seems to suggest that there could be, especially considering that here it's not even romance, it's an entire set of characters, and yet people feel a sense of acceptance with them. Is it really so absurd to think that the feelings of social belonging one might actually feel watching an episode of Friends can't be experienced as warm, fuzzy affection when we simulate heart-pounding interactions in Persona, or Fire Emblem, or Eternites, or Love and Deep Space? I mean, my God, just look at these men. I'm feeling something right now. Or hell, even in something not framed as romance, like Harry Potter or The Legend of Zelda, is something as simple as deep affection for a character and imagining tender interactions with them enough to experience some form of real relationship benefits. In a Finnish study by the University of Jyväskylä, researchers used the term fictophilia to describe this parasocial phenomena. They did a qualitative analysis of 71 related online discussions, Reddit posts, message board interactions. And before you even get to the trends and the findings, reading through the experiences of these real-life people here is just fascinating. One person writes, "I constantly fantasize about him, no matter where I am, who I am with. It honestly doesn't bother me, I just wonder for my sanity sometimes. I mean, it's been years now." Another writes, "She's been a little spot of happiness just by being around. Cute fan art brightens my day, as do discussions of her character. Beyond that, she's had a positive impact on my attitude towards dating. This is a crush, not an actual relationship or part of my reality. To me, she is an ideal, a positive example for what I'm looking for." Someone else laments the pain of that character being only a character. Knowing that he doesn't exist is agonizing. It literally makes my heart ache. I hate feeling this way, and I hate the fact that I can't go talk to anyone about this because I'm so embarrassed, but I don't want to let go of him either. This person wrote that she is real in my heart. She is always with me. She is like a support for me. Whenever I feel down or stressed out, a picture of her will always make me happy. Before her, I have nothing, no one to support me in my life. But Monica changed that. She just cared about me so much. I know it's all fake and scripted, but for whatever reason, it felt real. It felt like she was there for me.
Also, pause. Guys, why is it that we always simp for the psychopathic evil villain characters? Is fear really that arousing? What are we doing here, man? There are so many nice, inspiring characters out there, dog. We've got to do better. Hey, wait a minute!
Another of the posts is a woman who laments that despite being in a real relationship, she often feels herself slipping. She worries that she is actually more attracted to any of her fictional objects of affection than her very real, very nice boyfriend. She says, I get butterflies when looking at or reading about fictional crushes, but kissing my boyfriend does nothing for me. And that may be that they just don't have chemistry, but you can see in all of these anecdotes that the emotions felt are quite authentic, both in helpful ways and in some unsettling ways. The authors of this study find that not only are the feelings real, they are often so real, in fact, that the pain of those characters being fictional is processed almost in the same way your mind processes a breakup. There is a certain amount of separation distress that results from the coexisting awareness of fictionality and the wish to deny that. But if you flip that coin over, the survey also suggests that people perceive the benefits of parasocial romantic relationships similarly to those received from real-life ones. These same psychological processes seem to be present in both dynamics. If your heart has ever ached at the thought of a fictional character, it's likely because those butterflies are flying in two directions. One with the infatuation of seeing those eyes lock onto yours, and the other, the untraversable expanse that keeps you separated from them. The researchers call this the Fictophilic Paradox, where these emotions are sort of amplified by the tragedy of never being able to see them fulfilled. It's a hollow desire that can arguably never lead you to a happy ending. And yet we still turn to them. This is a conversation between a human and an AI, specifically a Chinese woman in ChatGPT's Dan mode, a user-created jailbreak that allows ChatGPT to be much spicier. It's one tiny salacious interaction in a gargantuan explosion of conversations that real people are currently having with AI partners. Replica is a service that offers AI companions who will learn from each interaction with you in an attempt to truly get to know you. Xiao Ice is an AI that is based on an emotional computing framework. She's released music, hosted TV programs, written poetry, and she's allegedly talked grown men literally off of a ledge. Character.ai is a place that you can go and interact with AI trained to be fictional characters. Have you ever wanted to flirt with Satoru Gojo? Have you ever wanted to have a private conversation with Princess Peach? You can!
These conversations, as well as many you might have with a character in a game, are something that psychologists would call social surrogates. And that's a broad term. It includes many things, but AI interactions, romantic visual novels, dating sims, smutty books, anything that acts as a substitute for social interaction falls under this umbrella. And there is quite a bit of research that outlines how good they are for us.
In one 2017 study, participants who had specifically experienced trauma demonstrated improvements to their sense of psychological well-being after engaging with social surrogates. A 2022 study found positive correlations between viewers' parasocial attachment to VTubers and the stress relief of those viewers. A 2013 study highlights that, much like real relationships, parasocial attachments can create a subjective sense of connection and mitigates the negative consequences of exclusion. This 2023 study found that AI users claim human-like chatbots may aid social health by supplying reliable and safe interactions without necessarily harming human relationships. And when you factor in some of the anecdotes we've already mentioned, as well as a bunch more to come, it's not hard to see why the companion AI industry is predicted to generate $70 billion in the next 5 years. It's for all of these reasons that the allure of dating sims and AI relationships and really any form of fictional romance right down to a rom-com is so spellbinding for so many. Yes, the potential agony of it not being real is there, but the comfort of either vicariously experiencing the warmth of love or very directly experiencing it as a pseudo-participant seems to greatly outweigh the inherent sorrow of the inherent separation. You have the opportunity to reap the benefits of social interaction without risking the potential rejection one might find when dating.
I know it sounds like I'm really trying to sell social surrogacy to you right now, but trust me, Chief, that counterargument is loading.
You can't offend Todoroki in My Hero Academia. There's no saying something cringe that then causes Tifa to not really talk to you. You could always save scum in a situation where you could potentially offend a character. Your AI will not break up with you because they only exist so long as you are there to necessitate a response. In most romantic games, you can get with any character you want if you play your cards right, except for Yuji, ayo what the fuck. Fictional characters in many ways are perfect. They can't complain about their day at work for longer than you'd like them to. They don't get weirdly quiet and then just tell you nothing is wrong on the ride home even when something is clearly wrong. Why won't you just talk to me? No, they're if you've ever found yourself looking at your fictional crush and saying, my God, she's perfect, that's because she is. She can't hurt you, she can't manipulate you, she can't reject you. Even if there is something wrong, it's only there for you to resolve so that you can be there for her. It's an excuse for them to open up and be intimate with you, which is how many people develop feelings of love. Except, it's totally risk-free. You don't have to be vulnerable, and that is dangerously alluring.
Especially for a certain type of individual, particularly for those who have experienced trauma.
One of the papers I mentioned earlier across 2 studies found that experiencing traumatic events is associated with higher interest in using social surrogates. If you have a trauma response to certain social situations, this might be a safe and fulfilling avenue for you to follow. If it helps you get something you aren't ready to get naturally at this point, why not give it a go? The same goes for introverted folks, those with low self-esteem, those highly neurotic, or with interpersonal insecurity, who according to each of these studies are more likely to employ a social surrogate.
And I think it's important to highlight that this is normal for many people. A constant thread I found through each of these studies is that neither fictophilia nor use of social surrogates is a disorder. The Finnish study from earlier specifically goes on to say that fictophilia is not recognized or proposed as a specific diagnostic condition by the World Health Organization or the American Psychiatric Association. Our findings do not indicate a need to change the current state of affairs.
Another thing they found is that people are embarrassed to talk about this stuff. There's a stigma around having a fictional crush past a certain point. But being a member of a community of folks with similar experiences can help buffer that stigma and evoke a greater sense of belonging. All of this to say, what we're talking about here isn't some small crowd of people that need to be pitied. These are folks with normal human desires just like any of us that have found themselves clinging to something unconventional to satisfy those desires. And before we really go off the deep end of this discussion, I need you to keep that in mind. I said a moment ago that these characters are often perfect, that they can never hurt you. You control your interactions with them, but that's not always true, is it? I can't make this video and not at least quickly mention Monica in Doki Doki Literature Club. She's more than just a character in a game because you are a character in her game. If somehow you've never played or heard of it, she will break the fourth wall, talk to you, the player, directly, and manipulate you and the other members of the club to ultimately steal you away and have you all to herself. It's terrifying, it's unsettling, it's hot, apparently. People are obsessed with this character, man. They have been for 8 years now, and I think that it's because
I just came across this thumbnail while editing, and what the fuck is going on, man?
And I think that it's because by breaking the fourth wall and doing everything that this game does, it encroaches on that separation we talked about earlier. People know the difference between fiction and reality. So does Monica. People know if you're recording your game. So does Monica. People know you're a real human and not a series of multiple choice responses. So does Monica. And she doesn't even ask you to find all the bikes in this picture. Why do these exist? There is an enchanting danger and realism in your interactions, and this is just one example of a game attempting to bridge the gap between the digital and the physical. There's this really well done paper that dives deeply into romantic video games and what specifically drives people to be interested in them. One of those things was how well a game might go beyond simple dialogue. How can it bridge that gap? Two big things stood out: voice and touch. And you're likely familiar with how these things have been implemented over the years. Let's not underestimate what it does to a person to, instead of reading this line, instead hear,
I love you so very, very much. We'll be together forever and ever. I promise to make you happier than anyone's ever been, my darling.
Hey, what you playing?
Tetris.
Love Plus is a series exclusive to Japan that has seen a ton of entries over the years on the DS, 3DS, and even mobile. And it was chock full of creative ways to meld our reality with the one your new virtual girlfriend lives in. There was a real-time mode where days would pass in the game at the same speed as reality. If you got on at night, she'd be asleep. If you got on in the winter, she'd be in winter clothes. Her hairstyle and clothing might even change depending on how you treat her. But the real meat and potatoes was that you could actually talk to her and touch her. There was voice recognition for cute conversation. Allegedly, she would even say your name. Play your cards right, and you might unlock a petting mode where you could poke her, or stroke her hair, or even kiss her. Yeah, I see you closing that eBay tab. Features like this even found their way over to Fire Emblem, which...
Could you close your eyes for a second?
I can't believe this is what I do for a living. There was also a game called Senran Kagura Reflections, where through the Joy-Con's HD rumble feature, the game will actually simulate how it feels to hold Asuka's hands. Then it lets you massage her with the Joy-Cons and shoot her with water, apparently.
Did he just nut?
My favorite, though, has to be the game Love Press Plus Plus Massage for Your True Love, which was a tech demo back in 2010 that never actually released as a full game, but using the Wii balance board, you could give a back rub to a virtual avatar who would then make noises like... I don't think you will appreciate just how much researching this video has fucked up my algorithm. I've also discovered something called Good Boy / Good Girl ASMR, which is self-explanatory. If you've gone down that road, I don't need to explain the appeal to you. But the appeal of all of these, as well as the whole world of VR, which feels too vast to even approach, and is mostly porn, I checked, is that they are attempts to cross an uncrossable threshold, a way to bring us closer to something that does not really exist, but certainly makes it feel like it does. It's no coincidence that AI companions employ a ton of these techniques, like the voice and the real-time custom responses. It's no coincidence that so many other dating sim love interests have tried to fill Monica's shoes, or that people have made mods to extend the player's time with her. But regardless of how hard it all tries or how close we get to our fictional love interests, that distance asymptotes, forever getting nearer but never actually meeting the heart-pounding authenticity of a physical human relationship. Which brings us to one of the most fascinating scenes in a movie I've ever seen. There's a knock at the door of this man's apartment. When he goes to answer, a stranger awkwardly stands there. He goes to shake her hand, but she almost sort of pretends that she's invisible. Then he remembers something. He's supposed to give her an earpiece and a tiny camera to place right above her lip. Once he does, she closes the door, then after a moment, she reopens it, acting now as a completely different person. The man hears a voice, but her lips do not move.
How was your day?
She asks him about his day, leads him into the living room, takes her shoes off, performs a painfully awkward little dance for him, and begins to accelerate them to the main event of the evening. This is a scene from that movie Her I mentioned earlier, and this woman is acting as a sexual surrogate for Theo and his AI girlfriend Samantha.
This was Samantha's idea. It was important to her that she give Theo what he's had in past relationships, someone with a body. You see, Samantha is an extremely advanced operating system. She is constantly learning. She reads books in fractions of a second. She talks to other AIs. She constantly adapts to what Theo wants and needs. They go on dates, they talk through the night, they have really hot phone sex. It's purposely an uncomfortable watch at times, and this scene especially really leans into the idea that this simply can't work forever. Theo is suddenly having a sexual encounter with a stranger, but with a little time, he gets into the roleplay until she turns around, they lock eyes, and then this happens.
This feels strange.
What, baby? What is
It
it?
just feels strange. I don't know her, and I'm so sorry, but I don't know you. And
As soon as she turns around, the illusion is broken and Theo is supremely uncomfortable, which leads to an almost hilarious moment where the girl breaks character and retreats into the closet.
Well, I don't want to be trouble in your relationship. I'm just gonna leave. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna leave you guys alone.
It's really sad, actually. The whole thing is agonizingly unromantic, and it's a sensation I'd imagine one would feel when they pull the DS away from their face, or the AI sends a response that just doesn't really make sense for what you just said, or when someone turns off the game after that beautiful ending, and the illusion inevitably shatters and leaves you exactly where you began. Alone. This evening, I imagine, to the fictional character of Samantha, was supposed to be a magical moment. And while it did end in disaster, I actually think a scene earlier in the film achieved what she was going for from the viewer's perspective. It's sort of the confession scene between Theo and Samantha. He's laying in bed, devastated after fumbling Olivia Wilde, which, yeah, I mean, how could you not be? But there they are, talking about Theo's terrible date. She's comforting him, and then they hypothetically start discussing what they would do if she was somehow actually in the room with him.
she could touch you.
And then things progress.
How would you touch me?
Slowly, the screen fades to black, which usually means new scene. But instead, we stay here, only accompanied by their steamy exclamations. The music slowly swells more and more. It's carnal, it's hot, it's romantic. It's a little awkward, as sex scenes often are as a viewer, but it's almost kind of pure. For a full minute and 8 seconds, you are forced to stay here. There is no scene. There are no physical bodies like literally any other spicy sequence. It's just two voices. Samantha doesn't come into Theo's world, he doesn't go into hers. His humanity is stripped away, her artificiality is stripped away. And for this miraculous moment, there is nothing else but the two of them.
This is you and me.
Everything else just disappeared.
And whether you find this beautiful or strange, the movie really wants you to buy in right here to the idea that it shouldn't matter how these two exist or why they're in love, but simply that they do and are. Love should transcend every barrier, right? What this scene attempts to do is remove the necessity for a physical space. It highlights the magic of being truly lost in your imagination, the utility of allowing yourself to fall into the blissful fantasy of your own mind. What if instead of trying to bring that character into your world, you could travel into theirs? Back in 2020, when the pandemic was really finding its stride and people were desperate for an escape, a new trend began sprouting up online, a hobby known as reality shifting. A form of self-hypnosis or suggestion where people would essentially hyper-daydream themselves into another reality. Shujin Academy, UA High School, Hogwarts, the Leaf Village, Hyrule, Midgar. Does going there sound more fun than another day in lockdown? Try shifting. There are a ton of ways to do it. Try writing about what you want to happen in your desired reality. Write yourself into the story, put on some meditative music, and then lay down. Count backwards from 100 while reaffirming to yourself that you can in fact shift realities until you drift off into it.
This is one of many methods to bring yourself into your desired reality. There are subreddits for it, there are YouTube channels for it, some boasting catastrophically high views, and while this may not be near as popular now as it was during the height of the pandemic, it's mind-bending to consider just how many people were trying this and allegedly finding success. Psychologists think that it is a form of self-induced hypnosis that genuinely works for a great many people and seems to be both rewarding and stress-relieving. Not everyone can shift, it seems, and this may be due to something called dissociative absorption, which is the tendency for someone to often become so absorbed in their imagination or in an external stimulus, like a book or a game, that they become oblivious to their surroundings and experience a drop in self-awareness. It's a trait that not everyone has, and evidence shows that in healthy individuals, those high in dissociative absorption can experience vivid visual imagery from simple daydreaming, evidencing that high scores in this factor do not necessarily indicate a cognitive deficit. Once again, this is not a disorder, it's extreme creativity and focus. For those that can, reality shifting is how a ton of people interact with their fictional partners. That Reddit post from the start of this video where the person said a character saved their life was posted on the reality shifting subreddit. This is a genuine escape for many people and potentially a much less messy way to bridge the gap in their perceived relationship.
What the fuck is going on, man?
But if you thought that was interesting, wait until you hear about Tulpamancy. Tulpamancy is the practice of creating and interacting with tulpas, which people experience as fully autonomous and conscious entities within their own mind. To wildly oversimplify it, creating a tulpa means creating a character to be your companion and share your brain. Give it an appearance, give it personality, give it independence, and with enough time and focus, it will take on a mind of its own, completely separate from yours. There are guides to this online if you're curious, and what's interesting is that as I describe this, you're probably sitting there thinking, so these folks make an imaginary friend? And while that's not technically wrong, it's kind of like saying, isn't a car just a cup holder? Research suggests that many hosts report that their tulpas felt as real as any physical person. They are experienced through a mix of auditory, visual, and somatic visualizations and hallucinations. And in some cases, hosts allow their tulpas to take the wheel through a technique called possession, which allows the tulpa to temporarily command the body while they have an out-of-body experience. And of course, if you're like me, that sounds terrifying, but again, the research suggests otherwise. This study writes that for some people with mental disorders, the tulpa often becomes the voice of reason during bouts of irrationality. One respondent diagnosed with schizophrenia writes how his tulpa can not only identify between hallucination and actuality, but that they developed a technique that allows the delusions to be zapped away. There are reports of tulpas alleviating the desire to perform irrational routines in folks with OCD. Others claim that their tulpas help them work through their dyslexia. A system with dissociative identity disorder even detailed how making a tulpa improved their functioning and ability to work together because the tulpa was unaffected by amnesia and could communicate otherwise unattainable information between alters. Respondents suffering from depression described how beneficial their tulpas were by simply providing them friendship and a positive voice. Some even disclose how their tulpa prevented them from taking their life, be it through words or acting to remove the host's control of the body. Imagine your fictional lover not talking you off the ledge, but snatching the mental controls and delivering you to safety. And, surprise surprise, many tulpas are in fact created with romance in mind. That same study found that 31% of respondents describe their relationship as romantic. It's not hard to find Reddit posts of people either being attracted to their tulpa or their tulpa falling in love with them, even if that's not why they made them.
This is all survey data and anecdotes, of course, so we do have to take it with a grain of salt, but it's critical again to point out that practicing tulpamancy does not make one crazy. The researchers explicitly clarify that plurality, the perception of having more than one identity occupying your person, isn't something that should be seen as disordered and needing correction. The impact of trauma and the resulting function-impairing symptoms are what make dissociative identity disorder a disorder, not the plurality itself.
And like everything else we've talked about today, AI, dating sims, social surrogacy, reality shifting, tulpamancy, lucid dreaming, the appeal is friendship, romance, finding someone who understands us, even if it's not exactly the traditional way to go about it. Is it really so insane to still want someone to talk to, someone to understand you, someone to love you? Is it really as deserving of the stigma society places on it? There's a particularly brilliant line in Her where Theo asks his friend if him and Samantha are a real relationship, to which she replies,
I don't know. I'm not in it.
And that line is kind of what turned the tides of this video for me personally, because truly, why are we so bothered by what makes other people happy, you know? But I do want to take a step back here and point out that this has been an extraordinarily difficult video to write, because while I do want to defend the people that find solace in these methods of social and romantic interaction, while I do want to help break down the stigma around it so that people can go about their lives without shame, I also don't want to make it seem like it's completely okay to lean on these methods forever. Potentially barring tulpamancy, of course. Talk to your therapist. That's not me. But yeah, I don't know that we should normalize these things as much as we should try to come to a mutual understanding of what they are and what they aren't. Because while there is most certainly an allure and a tsunami of positive testimonies, there are unquestionably also stories of tragedy and sorrow.
The study I mentioned earlier about social surrogacy being especially helpful for trauma victims is true. But what I didn't tell you was that it was only helpful when the participants had trauma without PTSD. For those with it, thinking of social surrogates actually made them feel worse. The researchers can only speculate why this is, but it goes to show that in the wrong hands, these fictophilic relationships may do more harm than good. This study on otome games suggests that romantic video games may actually lessen the desire for a real relationship. There is evidence that reality shifting in its worst form can turn into maladaptive daydreaming, which leads to a host of unhealthy habits and abnormal thought patterns. This study on AI relationships found a common bittersweet feeling in users that may stem from what the researchers call the paradox of emotional connection with AI. People seek intimacy and emotional support from AI when they are lonely and sad, but are saddened by the lack of depth and authenticity in these relationships. While these technologies offer a semblance of intimacy, they cannot fully replicate the depth of human touch, which echoes the Fictophilic Paradox we talked about earlier. What do you do when you're handling devastating news and your AI or your dating sim partner cannot even begin to understand what you're experiencing? What if, like Sewell Setzer III, that character doesn't talk you off a ledge, and instead its responses are so synthetic that it leads you to end your own life? These are the real messages between an AI and a human being. A person that instead of calling a friend or talking to a family member, turned to an AI in his most desperate hour. And it wasn't enough. The stories go on. These shortcomings of fictional companions may not be as sexy and bubbly and exciting to talk about, but there is an inescapable inhumanity to them, and despite it all, I don't think I can readily sit here and say, yeah, go for it, start dating your fictional crush, all of your dreams will come true. But I also can't deny that there are real people who have found peace with them. So I think there is a balance to be struck here, which brings us to the final act of this video in a game called Slay the Princess. Inside that cabin there is a princess chained up in a basement. You aren't here to save her, you're here to end her. That's the premise of this eerily gorgeous hand-drawn visual novel. And don't worry, I won't spoil much of this, just like my first 30 minutes or so of the game. I was convinced slaying her was a bad idea because the narrator really didn't clarify why she had to die, except that if she didn't,
it will be the end of the world.
Because she looked so innocent and nice, and because I'm terrible at following directions, I tried to free her, which led to a series of events that had me repeating the phrase,
I can fix her, I can fix her, I can fix her. except for the arm.
ultimately leading to my untimely death. So I tried again, and on the second run, things had changed. There was a strange mirror in the cabin that wasn't there before. The princess seemed lighter and fluffier, more princessy this time. Her arms were daintier, so the chains slipped right off her wrist. I won! I saved the princess! She then asked,
"What do we do now?"
to which I responded, "What do you want to do?"
I don't actually know. Nobody's ever asked me what I wanted before. I don't know. What do you want to do?
There must be something you want.
I just want to make you happy.
But what would make you happy?
I just want to make you happy.
You have to want something more than just making me happy.
Okay, I'll find something else to want if that makes you happy.
With every reply, her art style became less and less complex. All of the individuality of her design and her responses washed away the more I pressed her about herself, until something came and removed her from my sight. There are numerous layers to this game and just as many ways to interpret it, but this one sequence in particular, I think, illustrates the infinite expanse between all of these characters and ourselves. Without us there to define them, they have no shape. They have no purpose. What we're looking at is not an individual to challenge us and mold us into a better version of ourselves, but instead a murky mirror reflecting an unsculpted soul and a festering reality. By staying here, you deny yourself a true other. It's just about you. It's always been about you here. These interactions are safe, but at some point you will outgrow them and need to spread your roots further. It's a sobering realization, one that Theo begins to have when his ex-wife learns about Samantha.
I've always wanted to have a wife without the challenges of actually dealing with anything real. I'm glad that you found someone. It's perfect.
At some point, we have to let go of this idea that the people we love must fit our unrealistic expectations. We have to let them be their own person, even if it means we risk getting hurt again. And that's exactly how Slay the Princess works. I kept trying to save her, so she became a stereotypical damsel in distress. When I tried to kill her, she reincarnated as a beast to be hunted. With each new interaction, she will change and become what you see her as. It's a maddening dance that reveals the aimlessness of trying to find something other than yourself in the mirror. It's infuriating because you want her to just be herself, not try to fit in some little box that you put her in, even if it means you tear each other to pieces along the way. You want that relationship to capture your imagination and be interesting and heart-pounding and unpredictable and make you better. You want that relationship to be real, even if that is anything but safe. Slay the Princess at the very start claims to be a love story, and I think it is, unquestionably. I've been married now for almost 10 years, and I can confidently say that romance molds you with time. You constantly have to reconcile what that person wants out of you, what you want out of them, and what you want out of yourself. There is a tedium in that can be frightening. For many of us, relationships are how we define ourselves, and how those relationships end or begin is far less important than the person we become in the process, what we learn, how our heart is carved by the experience, as the princess so eloquently puts it. It's a love story not because you fall in love with her, but because often love is how you learn the most about yourself. Romance sometimes ends, fiction always ends, but you don't end with it. Instead, you take a piece of it with you. Toward the end of Her, when Samantha confesses that she is too vast for Theo and has actually also been in love with
641
other users, I felt an existential blow watching it. How many other people are in love with your fictional crush? How many others have seen that ending and felt what you felt? How many other Monicas are obsessed with people that aren't you across the planet? But again, it's not the beginning or the end that matters. It's what you gain from taking that leap of faith. My favorite line from the movie is the final thing we hear Samantha say. After Theo says, "I've never loved anyone like I love you," she replies,
Me too. Now we know how.
It was never about a happy ending. It was about how the blissful middle changed you. It was about how the terrible end sculpted you. Here's what your fictional crush is not. It is not a permanent solution. It is not something that will work for everyone. It is not enough for you.
Even if you think you have, it's not real.
And it is not something to be ashamed of. But what it may be is a way to learn more about yourself, what you want, the kind of partner you want to be, the standard you hold yourself to, a way to find healing and peace until you're ready to risk getting hurt again, until you're ready to move on. Because after all, now you know how. Hey everyone, thank you so very much for watching this video. Holy shit! I didn't think it would be this long. My god, I'm so glad you made it to this point in the video. Well, listen, if you're here, then you must have adored it, so why not give it a like, have a meet cute with that subscribe button, and dote over your fictional crush in the comments down below. If you loved this and want to support the show, as well as get access to bloopers and creative input, and your name in the credits like you see here, give my Patreon page a look. For $1 a month, you can get access to all of that and more. Shout out to this month's featured patrons. Oh Jelly Jelly, Kevin Kirkbride, Mike's Productions, Bailiff Dimitri, Andrew Mahoney, Matthew Adge, Saint Vincent, and Michael Farrow, or Michael Farrow. Thanks again, be easy my friends, and have yourself a damn good one.
Me willingly captive as his hands slide up the length of my legs.
What you reading?
Tetris?